welcome back to the Great Rabino. We haven't done an interview in a few months, actually. I think since the last football season or maybe this past summer. But today we have Joe Pearl from Fightful. We're talking wrestling. We're going to talk Jews' impacts in wrestling because Mitzvah Mania is coming up in LA April 2nd, and we're trying to talk to everyone. So, Joel, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. This is a wild cross section for me because I speak openly about my Jewish upbringing and like my love of wrestling, but I never get to like have a conversation with other Jews other than I don't think he minds me saying it. Steven Jensen, who works at Fightful as well, does the Weekender podcast on Fightful Select. He is also Jewish, so he and I have had a lot of online bonding sessions about growing up as Jewish wrestling fans. So this is a really exciting conversation to have.
Awesome. Yeah, Jews actually have had a decent amount of certainly behind the scenes stuff. You have Gabe Sapolsky and Paul Heyman and Bill Apter, and you have like those are some real names that have certainly transcended Jews in wrestling. Let's dive into it. I want to dive right into like the man, the myth, the legend, the salt of the earth, MJF. How do I put this? I think like I've had this conversation with a lot of people, whereas there have been plenty of wrestlers over the generation, not plenty, but there's been a handful who have had, worn the Jewish star in their tights, talked openly, most notably, maybe we'll get into Barry Horowitz and Colt Cabana and certainly Goldberg. But MJF is wearing it. He is talking about it. He is talking about anti-Semitism in the middle of the ring. I love more than anyone maybe ever to hate him, and I think he's bringing real Jewish stories and struggles to life. What's it like covering him?
So frustrating. I said this, I tweeted this recently, where every time he has something to say about his pride in being Jewish or shutting down someone who is being anti-Semitic or just someone who just literally sucks as a human being, I just say I can't boo him because his journey is so honest and he's very proud of his upbringing. And I can't hate that. Like I respect that he is open about it. I respect that he is prideful of it. So that's one hand. And on the other hand, then I watch him play the character of MJF on Wednesday nights or on a pay-per-view, and I'm just like, oh, what a dick. And I want to hit him. But that's probably the best part about Max is that he is so good at towing that line of his character and himself that he makes it hard to hate him, but then he makes it very easy on the turn of a dime. So it is interesting to talk about him. But at the end of the day, I can't help but really appreciate the man and what he's doing for Jews, not just Jews in wrestling, but just the Jewish perspective in general. It's pretty cool.
I was trying to explain this to people the other day. I said, you can have nonsense on Twitter or positivity on Twitter or all sorts of social media, but I'm not sure anyone in the world is doing as much against anti-Semitism as MJF is. He has millions of people watching him every week. He tells those stories. He is not ashamed of it. He's not backing off. He gets a lot from Don Rickles, who was my favorite comedian as well. But Don Rickles was the same way. He allowed you to embrace and love Jews because he made fun of everyone. And equally, and he said it. He was like, if we can't laugh together, where are we going with this? And I think it's a very similar way that MJF is doing it. And yeah, there's times you're like, that was a little over. And you're like, but that's what makes him special. I mean, and he really is. Except that he's the champion, so he's like turned up to 110 or whatever. But he is Don Rickles and Rowdy Piper if they had a baby, right?
And you can tell too when it comes to his Piper love, like he wants to be Roddy Piper so bad. That was his guy, still is to this day. If Piper was around, I see no reason why Tony Khan would have made plays to bring him in to be in some sort of something with Max. Not necessarily it's a talking head because MJF doesn't need that, but someone that would have been by his side, someone like how Lance Archer had Jake the Snake and so on and so forth, Sting as Darby Allin and all that. You would have had Roddy with MJF in a second, and it would have been magical. There's the love there.
I agree. I got to meet Piper once, who not Jewish, but was so kind. And I'm sitting there. It was one of my first like conventions, I think, where I went to meet wrestlers. I had met RVD once before I started keeping shop. It's the last thing I did was went to meet RVD at a signing. It was like that small period between ECW and WWE where he had not landed anywhere. And then my first convention, and everyone was so expensive. And Piper was sitting there like $15, and he was just hugging everyone. He was just, and then also was at his last appearance was in Minnesota. He had Piper's Pit, and I was there. And I said to my wife, I took my wife. She lost a bet, so she had to come with me. Hogan was on the show and Piper, and I said, I cannot believe I'm seeing Rowdy Piper as an adult live. And then he passed very soon after that.
I have a copy. I have a copy. It's right over there. I want to grab it when you get a second. I have a copy, a signed copy of Roddy's book.
Oh,
And that's the thing, I never met him. I called into a radio show that he was guesting on. And asked a question. I was like 14 years old, but and they ended up giving me a signed copy of the book, and I still have it. It's sitting right there on another desk, and I'm just staring at it. And that, like, I loved him as much as MJF might have.
yeah, he was a special dude, and it really one of these people who you met and you automatically felt like he could. There's very few people I've met in the world where like everyone can be your best friend, everyone loves you. Bob Saget, I got to meet, and he was that way. But like, I think about that like a lot. Piper, we lost, and what he could have done to especially for the way he was able to sort of speak to Vince in a way that other people have never been able to, at least to say publicly. Let's get into so MGF. I think we could talk about all day, and let's talk about Goldberg. I was just teaching a class, Jews and Wrestling, and to a bunch of 7th and 8th graders, and I show a clip of Goldberg walking out in Saudi Arabia and them chanting Goldberg, Goldberg. And I said, you don't understand what this means. Like what that transcends in terms of world. Whereas like, if you were just Bill Goldberg walking down the street, probably not a great scenario. Here they're chanting for you. What do you think Goldberg's lasting legacy on the sport and for Jews in sport?
Goldberg is so cool. I'm going to use that again. I'm a kid growing up in Ottawa, Canada, and I'm watching WCW Monday Nitro, or I'm watching WCW Thursday Thunder, or I'm watching Saturday Night, and this big dude with the last name Goldberg shows up on my screen, and I'm just like, I got to know all about him. And I'll never forget going back to books. He had his biography, his autobiography, whatever it was. And on the back, it's him wearing a kippah, a yarmulke. And I'm like, he's very open about his Jewish heritage. He's very proud of that. And again, this is starting to sense a trend here in our conversation. He was in many ways life-changing for me as a fan. And talking about representation, he was someone that like was pushed to the top, was a world champion, was a world beater, was like the baddest guy next to Stone Cold Steve Austin at the time, and everyone wanted to know when's it going to be Goldberg and Stone Cold, and that was huge when I was a kid. So years later, when he comes back and he wants to have that run, I went to Survivor Series in 2016 when they did Goldberg versus Brock, and like he wins in just over 90 seconds, and the crowd is like shocked, losing their mind, and I'm just like wide-eyed looking at it, being like, oh my God, my guy just beat Brock Lesnar. This is amazing. I loved it. I didn't love everything about Goldberg, but one thing I really, really still admire to this day is how much he wanted to do things for the kids. And he wanted to do that in WCW, and then even more so when he came back to WWE in 2016. And I greatly admire someone who wants to give back in a world that they're respectful of, but they also understand that gave them a platform and a career. So he's used a lot of that for good, and I'll always like Bill Goldberg for that. And recently he said, WWE owes me one more match, and he wants to do his retirement match potentially in Israel. And I was like, Goldberg in Israel doing his retirement match? Give him a Von Erich, give him one of the Von Erich kids, and like you'll sell out whatever you want.
Yeah,
that's something that's interesting to me.
Yeah, they haven't gone over to Israel. I'm friendly with the one promotion over there. They were actually supposed to be a part of this Mitzvah Mania, which we'll get into. but for a multitude of reasons, he's not coming over. We do have one of his students going to be on the show. And I think that would mean a lot for Goldberg. I think he is. I've heard his intentions to go over there. I think he also like having a child and holding the name. He's actually spoken about it more recently. It was in the little documentary they did. I don't think they ever hit it. I mean, his name was Goldberg, but he didn't do any. He did this Jimmy Kimmel Man Show thing where they did a Hanukkah, which is spoof, and as opposed to, but very out front. When we, besides Barry Horowitz, when we were younger, some of these Jewish wrestlers, you didn't know Dean Malenko was Jewish. You certainly didn't know Lanny Poffo or Macho Man had a Jewish mother, and spoke with Lanny about it. Let him rest in peace. I spoke with him about it a couple of years ago. Never got a chance to meet Savage, who's my all-time favorite wrestler. And so I think Goldberg, Barry Horowitz is a great wrestler if you're a big-time wrestling fan, but he didn't transcend the world. He did for wrestlers. He was a great wrestler, and I don't want to take anything away from his accomplishments, but he wasn't holding the title on national TV every week. I actually loved the last run with Goldberg. If you look at WWE as a product for children, and we're adults just loving it, then he was great. Like, it doesn't matter how long the match goes. They don't have to put on the match. We're coming off less than 24 hours that Daniel Bryan and MJF went 107 minutes, and you don't have to do that at WWE. It's a different product. So where do you see like Macho Man and Palfo and some of these guys, Chris Masters, who's now been a part of it, and Victoria we talked about. Do you wish some of them would have worn it more outwardly? And we'll get to Colt in a moment, or do you just sort of like it's just a part of them? And it's like I'm a rabbi, so it's a little different. But like everyday Jews don't just necessarily like, hey, I'm Jewish on the back of their sweatshirt, kind of thing.
Yeah, and also not many of them are athletes. That's not necessarily something we're super duper known for, but.
Right.
There are other people on that list you can add. Drew Gulak is someone that people don't necessarily equate with being Jewish, unless I think there's a lot of if you know going on where, most Jews can spot a Jewish name from a mile away the second you see someone's real last name, their shoot last name, if you will. It doesn't bug me. It doesn't bug me because I don't think you're not inclined. You don't have to announce to the world that you're Jewish. I think it's wonderful when it's so much a part of you that you bring it out in your character or in your interviews, whatever it is. But I've never been like, oh, you should be talking about this all the time.
Right.
There's a certain sense of pride that I personally get, and I know others do when they do openly discuss it. It's just another point of connection to that person, and I think that's great. Sometimes I don't even mind finding out till after the fact. There are times where I'm just like, after all these years, this guy was Jewish, and I either did or didn't admire their work. Like, that's a pretty cool extra point too, because then I can go back and watch their work and be like, okay, yeah, no, this is cool, or man, this really wasn't great, but he's Jewish, so I think I like him now. Someone else though who is there but not is Noam Dar. Yeah. And I remember when the Cruiserweight Classic happened, they were touting him as, Scotland via Tel Aviv. And I was like, that's nothing normal. Like, that doesn't happen much. And they never really played up on it more, but they really did in the Cruiserweight Classic play up the fact that he is a Scottish Jew. And that I remember watching the Classic and being like, oh, I want this guy to go so far. I don't care if he wins. I just want him to be like on the map. And people really liked him, and he's still with WWE. And I think that's a really good positive impact as well.
So Gulak's done a few like videos for them where he did like this whole teaching everyone about Hanukkah, and he wore a Jewish star last week on NXT, which was really cool.
Yes, you're right.
And I think MJF has opened sort of that door for people, and Gulak's always been proud of it. And then there's Noam Dar, who I have interviewed a long time ago before he was doing all this. My belief is actually they have very big plans for him because he's the only NXT UK person, I believe, that they haven't put back on TV. or that's not like there's no reason to keep him around. Everyone else got cut, and they've had him forever.
He's I was gonna say he's a wonderful talker. He's a wonderful wrestler. Like he's got the right tools.
And they made a toy of him. He's one of the only UK people. I'm not talking about like Gunther and I don't even know that Tyler Bates has it as a figure. So like there's something about him that WWE is not letting him go for a reason, and I don't know what that is. And there's also another guy we didn't talk about is Matt Bloom, or played Albert and A-Train and Tenzai and Lord Tenzai and 12 other characters. Is the head trainer at NXT. And then you also have Kelly. His father's Jewish. So like there's certainly been some, and all of these wrestlers have accomplished a pretty good amount. I mean, Kelly certainly had no joke of a career. Lisa Marie Verone also, and so we're starting to see, and then there's QT Marshall. So we're starting to see sort of like a more of an influx. I believe there's something big for Noam Dar. I don't know when and what it will be, but there's no reason. He's not injured, or we haven't heard of anything. He won right before he got a push in NXT UK before they closed it. So I want to talk about, I think we'd be remiss not to talk about Colt Cabana for a moment, because he also has worn it on his sleeve. And many sleeves since Pro Wrestling Tees. So, where do you think he goes down? Because his impact is not necessarily on television, but he is the independent wrestler, and many would say that,
And that's it. He is the independent wrestler. He's had Road Diaries, right? He's had experience with almost every single promotion you can think of. He's touched it in one way or another. He is the ultimate road warrior wrestler. And I'm not talking about the Road Warriors, but I'm talking about someone who's on the road, 365. He's very well respected in his circles. Unfortunately, he has a friend, or a former friend, who is much more popular than him, and as a result, it's tough to have the same conversations with those people in the room. And I think that hurt him in certain ways in terms of going ascending beyond what we're talking about right now. Could he have been bigger? Yeah, he probably could have, but we don't know for sure. But I do think that kind of plays a bit of a role, talking about him and his buddy Chicago Phil. But Colt he's special in that he cares so much about wrestling, and he cares so much about the betterment of the business. He is someone who lives the old adage, leave the business better than you found it. And he is going to continue to be that person until he's ready to fade off into the sunset, do whatever he wants to do next. Like I said, very special talent, very special person. I have yet to meet him, but every single person I know has had nothing but positive interactions with him. And I think that's a very telling effect of someone on other people.
Well, we've had him here, and I've done a ton of stuff with him, and he'll be at Mitzvah Mania. Let's talk about Mitzvah Mania for a little bit. I'm going to plug the show April 2nd. There's only a handful of tickets left so far. Tell me a little bit. I know you can't be there, which for a wrestling reporter to not be at WrestleMania weekend, either someone in your family's due, or I don't know why you would miss it, but tell from your perspective as a Jewish man who's passionate about wrestling, when you saw this, what did you think about it, and who's on the card?
I was floored. I've never been so upset to miss a wrestling event in my life. Oh man. So it's funny you're like talking about, who would miss WrestleMania weekend unless someone was, last year it was my wife was, we were expecting, my son was born on March the 30th. So it was right around like a few days later, about a week later, I think it was like, we get to the end, we get to his bris, and then a couple days later it's WrestleMania, and I'm doing the watch along here over on our Fightful YouTube, because I'm not sleeping anyway, and so I may as well just make use of my time. And now every year I have to contend with, it's his birthday, or I can get to WrestleMania. I think it's really going to depend where WrestleMania is. This year being in LA, that's a trek. That's for a guy in Toronto, it's easy to get there, but it's also long to get there. And of course, the joke that I made originally was when I saw that you guys are doing the show, I was like, oh man, fly me out and I'm there. But I don't think I'm on the talent budget, and that's okay for this time. That being said, the people that you have coming in, first of all, I had to put it in my head. I was like, QT Marshall. Oh yeah, Jew. Oh, Chris Adonis. Oh my God, that's right. He is also a member of the tribe. A bunch of people on your roster for this. I'm just like, this is really neat. This is a bunch of people coming together for a common cause. I've seen a lot of Jewish led programming that it revolves around wrestling, but I so rarely see someone do a show that's based around Jews in wrestling where like the matches include other Jews. And that to me makes this event that much more special. It's one thing to be like, I'm supporting whatever the organization is or whoever it is that's doing it. It's entirely different, in my opinion, when the talent also follows the same narrative or at least the same background as the promotion itself or the organization that's putting it on. So for that, I'm just upset that I'm not going to be able to be there. And I'm sitting there just being like, get on Fight TV, get it on IW. I don't care what you do, find a way to stream it or at least get it out there.
I think we're going to try to record it as a DVD.
Good.
Because I don't think I'm getting, so just in transparency, the hardest part about booking the show has been that like I don't have any of my natural resources. Like I don't have my ring, I don't have my film guy, I don't have like none of that exists. It's not like a quick call. Everything's like okay, and I might have to, I'm negotiating basically against myself because there's no right. It's Mania week. So, but right now I think we're the only show working Sunday. We haven't announced some of the talent. There's some more local people. And we're still working on one or two big ones, and MJF and Goldberg and Heyman. If you're out there, we would love you to show up. You can basically do whatever you want. We'll figure that out. And it's been a lot of fun, and so many people have come forward. We've watched a lot of tape. One of the things I'm using is a bunch of Jewish reps wrote in, and I already booked the rest because my ref is going to be there, and I knew at the end of the day, at very least, I needed to trust the person calling, in the ring, because everyone besides Colt and Masters, it's a lot of new talent. I mean, I know Royce and a few of the other guys, but it's relatively new. And we have a special attraction that our belt is going to be defended by Billy Starks as our champion. And so it's like, I call that the Andre the Giant. It's like the special attraction. We basically I said to Billy, like, who have you not? Everyone's going to be in LA. Who do you want? And she's like, never wrestled Brooke Havoc. I'm like, oh, let's do that. That sounds great. So we're working on some of those things, and then we're going to infuse, like, now that the card's sort of settled, we're going to infuse some like Jewish pieces to the show, and I'm super excited. But yeah, the plan is to release it on DVD.
Very excited for the Chanukah lighting match, the Chanukah lighting match. I got to fell over Billy Starks for a minute. How incredible is she? An 18-year-old with like that much maturity and like so many options in life, and she is crushing it at every turn. Like she's just fantastic. Like she's the right person to have as your champion. I'm really happy to see that.
Billy is she's a woman now. We'll call her a woman, but it's a special kid. When I met her, always had the parents. The parents are just incredible. You'll know this. I just started. I don't have like t-shirts or anything, but I think we're going to do it where it's like, I call them like the behind the scene menches of second wrestling. So Mouse was just inducted as the second mensch, who is the first is Eric Cannon, who helped me with all this. So I got two menches on my team. I'm trying to get a minion going, and Mouse is there. And that's a big piece of it, is that she has great parents who are realistic with her. And she's one of the people that I met early on, and she's also a star. And you can just, it's funny, and this is a plug for her. And I know we're talking about Jews and wrestling, but she is our champion. Is that everyone knows it. The locker room goes out to see her. That and she is so humble about it. And there's others, like I've heard that about Seth Rollins, that Seth Rollins has never let it go to his head. And that's not true of every wrestler. And so Billie is couldn't be sweeter. And you know it. I mean, not only does everyone go out to all the wrestlers go out to watch her match, regardless of who I put her against. It's just the way she walks to the ring. It's the way she connects with the crowd. She knows who and when, and part of that is her training, you know, with Lee Moriarty and others, and Trey Miguel and others who've had a major influence on her. And she didn't bite. She's getting booked so much, but she doesn't bite off more than she can chew. I once thanked them, the family. I was like, we're such a small company, and she's in GCW and now Dark and getting longer and longer matches on Dark. I mean, it's clear what's going on. Like she's both companies. If they don't know who she is, then they don't care, like for whatever reason. But she's just a star, and she's a special talent, and we're excited to have her as our champion and our first inaugural champion. And eventually she can't be the champion because she's, she's going to be on national TV. Let's just call it what it is.
No, just keep it on her. Just be like, this is yours. It's fine. Take it with you. Take it with you. You want to sign it?
Yeah, defend it on Dark. We'd love that. Joel, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for coming on. This was a great talk about Jews and wrestling, and maybe we'll circle back at some point when we do Mitzvah Mania 2 at some point. All right?
Would love it. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course.